Shout out to CFB Nation.
Welcome to another marvelous episode of CFB Nation, hosted by me, Lever KT, a.k.a. the governor of college football, and this is our spring game tour edition last week. Some of you guys know I was in NC State in Raleigh, North Carolina, to see their spring game, and the compare and contrast between Clemson and NC State, very vivid just upon arrival. NC State was a little cold outside. It was 40-some-odd degrees. It was rainy. Wasn't a lot of people at the stadium, but Clemson was vastly different. I think yesterday, some of you guys may know, may not know as well, that we had Moon was covering the Georgia Tech spring game, so he was live at Bobby Dodd. Nino was covering the Boston College game. They're going to also give you some recaps of those spring games. But me and our director Mike, we were down at the Clemson spring game. The first thing I noticed off rip is that we got there early. We were there maybe about 8:30. I think gates opened at 8 a.m. and there were already massive people there. So I already knew we might be full to capacity for a spring game. So football is a little bit different in the South. Secondly, the hospitality. People were so nice. I think people could tell that we weren't from the area, and they could tell that we did media. So the amount of people that just came up and talked to us, just talked about the game we love. I met this wonderful family from Conway. They right near Myrtle Beach, and I was telling them that Myrtle Beach is actually one of my favorite vacation destinations. So we got to chop it up quite a bit. I got to talk to a lot of fans. Some of that content I'll throw in as shorts. I won't introduce until this segment that we're doing today. But those were my earliest impressions. Is that, one, people were out there bright and early. Two, the weather was fantastic. And three, just the southern hospitality. It gets you every time. Like, every time I'm in one of those places, I'm like, wow, I really need to go south, because people definitely treat you right. So those were my early kind of feelings of being in Clemson. So the next order of business was really, they had live events there. There was a podcast. I wish I could plug the name of the podcast. They were there live early in the morning. Also, we had field access. We had full access the entire game. So me and Mike, we were down on the field. We got out there early. We got to sit into the visitors' locker room, which is currently under construction, but it was still beautiful. They had food set up for us. Just went all out to make sure that media was comfortable. So we were able to work in between quarters, work pregame, internet access, the whole nine. So shout out to them. Shout out to everybody that made this thing possible. So let's get into the spring game. Let's talk about it. So right before the spring game started, you can kind of tell that Dabo was going to be doing some work for ACC Network. And I think, if you don't know Dabo personally, you kind of see sound bites, you kind of see things. You don't really get to know these people, but meeting people in person, some of those prerequisite notions that we kind of have in our mind kind of go away. Dabo Swinney is a man's man. He's an entertainer. He entertained the crowd. He was holding a microphone. He was like the voice jockey for the opening toss. He was just excited for Clemson football, and he could sit there and talk all day about how well this incoming freshman class and last year freshman class have just come in and really understood the system. So let's get into what you guys are here for, the Clemson spring game recap. So like I always do, some of the things that I was looking forward to in this game was, one, Cade Klubnik. We finally get to see him. There's no DJU or Cade Klubnik. Cade Klubnik is the guy. So I wanted to come in and see Cade Klubnik. Secondly, I wanted to see Will Shipley. Unfortunately, he couldn't play. He had an injury. It was just like a precautionary thing. And they said quite a few people because of precautionary things. But he is certainly on my list for the Doak Walker Award, and I think he should be on your list as well as one of those people to watch out for, because Garrett Riley's system is very friendly. We seen what he was able to do at TCU last year, and I think this offense could be just as explosive, if not even more explosive, than TCU's offense. I also want to see, as aforementioned, Garrett Riley. How does his new system look? How much are they going to be willing to show in spring games? Like, with these spring games, you got kind of like a couple of schools of thought. One school of thought is, hey, we want to put on a show. We want to get our boosters, our fans, the people that are spending this NIL money to see why they should support our team this year. So you kind of get a little bit more than you would get at other typical spring games. Other spring games you see is just like a 5-second grab or a two-hand touch. They don't go really hard. The corners and the wide receivers do, but for the most part, you're not tackling and hit each other hard. One thing about being at these stadiums, and that's why during the fall, CFB Nation will be traveling throughout the entire fall. You just get inside scoops, and I was able to report yesterday that I seen a meeting between some of the officials at Clemson, not like the referees, but officials at Clemson, and they were speaking with the referees about how they want this game played, and they broke it right down. They said it will be our first team offense versus our first team defense. They will be on two separate teams. It will be our second string offense versus our second string defense, two separate teams. So you get in competition on competition. This is the best of the best. So that was the one thing that I noticed was a huge difference between this game and then the NC State game that I had seen last week. So we seen that. We seen also, I expected a running fourth clock in the fourth quarter because that's what I seen last week. That wasn't the case either. So early on, the things that we seen when people were out there hitting. Like, it wasn't you're my teammate. People were out there competing for jobs, and I think that's what Dabo wanted to see. I kind of asked him that in the presser. You guys will see that a little bit later, but people were out there hitting. They weren't playing no games. They were out there competing. I think that's why you've seen such a low-scoring game, because people were, like I said, they were out there competing. They were fighting for spots. Yes, we didn't see the full roster, but people were out there competing for spots, okay? Klubnik, he was 18 for 33, 190 yards. Yes, he did throw 2 interceptions, but let me break those 2 interceptions down. The first interception, on the goal line, they went for it, trying to make a play, boom, interception. The second one, and Barnes just made a beautiful play on the ball. It was a tip pass, and like Dabo always say, tip passes and deflections should always result in interceptions. So, and Barnes was able to take it back to the crib for a touchdown. Listen, he played pretty well. He was, sub 55% completion percentage. Yes, he did have the 2 interceptions. We don't want to overlook those 2 interceptions, but I wasn't sure how much Garrett Riley wanted to put out there. And just like I said in the opener about these schools of thought, he really didn't put a lot out there. The tempo wasn't as fast as I expected either. So that tempo that everybody seen yesterday, expect that to be a little bit more expedited during the fall. So great to see that people were out there competing. They weren't just going through the motions. People actually wanted to put on a good showing for the fans. So the first standout I would love to talk about is Dominique Thomas. Phil Maffa, Will Shipley are running backs 1 and 2, but I feel like Dominique Thomas can push Phil Maffa for that, secondary spot. I'm not saying in the beginning of the season he's going to push it for him, but I think that he can find a way to steal some carries and get roughly like 4 or 5 carries a game. May not sound like a lot, but that'd be a lot for him because he demonstrated some ability to run a rock, and he was getting carries, and sometimes the holes weren't even there. He would just make a move, find a spot, and get some yards. So Dominique Thomas was certainly the standout that I seen offensively. Like I said, this is a very friendly offense. Very friendly offense. It's quarterback friendly. It's running back friendly. I must admit that they kind of had a makeshift offensive line. Not making excuses, but, just sitting here presenting the information the only way I know how. All right. Secondly, defense played lights out. If I'm Dabo and the coaching staff, I'm completely happy with the defense that our team played today. 20-13 in the spring game. We seen offenses in Boston, the offensive Boston College for this spring game put up 60-some odd points. No, this was a real good football game. It was good to the very end. It was tied 13-13 late in the fourth quarter. With 3 minutes left, we were asking ourselves, are they going to do overtime? I was like, no, I highly doubt it because it's a spring game. You don't want anybody else get hurt. But it was that type of game. The atmosphere was just out of this world. I'm telling you, it was truly out of this world. It's hard to describe. It's hard to quantify in words how dope this atmosphere was. Y'all seen on the intro. I added a little snippet to the intro. Like, just talking with the fans, just seeing the people that were there. also was pretty fantastic. Brian Brissy, he was there. I seen him do an interview with Fox. I got to chop it up with him a little, just off the record, but I'm still able to chop it up with him. Shaq Lawson, just see some of the returning players that came in. Shaq Lawson, like, you could just tell he loves Clemson football. I also got to chop it up with him for a little while. He sat on the sidelines with the DNs. He was coaching them up, all types of things. So just seeing that atmosphere, people love Dabo Swinney. I know from the outside looking in, we're critical of Dabo. We like, hey, you don't do JUCO players. Hey, you don't grab players out of the portal. Hey, why are you like this? That's because Dabo believes in family. So when you see players transfer from Clemson, best believe it hurts Dabo Swinney. Like, it hurts him because he wants that family-like atmosphere. He's very respectful to the reporters there. He spent a lot more time on questions than I thought most coaches would, just because, their time is of the essence. They're trying to get ready to put a national championship team together. But like I said, Dabo impressed me probably more than anybody there because I had preconceived notions about him. But like I said, those went away. So all in all, I thought it was a great experience. Like I said, Dominique Thomas stood out. Wide receivers, the kid Earl stood out for me a lot. Tough as nails. I didn't get an update on the injury that he had, but he had like 2 catches for 51 yards. I wanted to see more. Of course, the fan in me wanted to see more. The X's and O's in me wanted to see a lot more offensively, but I do think we're seeing a vanilla offense. But these guys are competitors. You seen Garrett Riley on the sideline just amped up. He was just so excited, and so into the game. He was in regular season mode, if you ask me, because Dabo was doing the thing with the ACC network. So it was pretty much the coordinators coaching and running these games. So you see, like I said, Garrett Riley was dialed in. He was completely dialed in. So I can't wait to see what this Clemson team looks like in the fall. I will definitely be back in the fall, probably for a good amount of their games. Maybe I shouldn't say a good amount of the games. Maybe I should say 2 or 3, because we plan on doing a lot of traveling in the fall. As I always like to say, do something nice that somebody normally wouldn't do. Always pay it forward. Peace and love. Peace and blessings. And until next time. One.
Shout out to CFB Nation.